And what I would say about emotional intelligence is there are 4 domains to the emotional intelligence model, and self-awareness is number 1. Self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, and relationship management. And when we think about what makes any of us successful, it's almost always in those behavioral domains. It's in emotional intelligence. It's not just the technical competencies in whatever it is that is our area of expertise. If you're a cardiothoracic surgeon, or if you run the highest performance revenue cycle management firm in the Pacific Northwest, right? Whatever made you great, in order to do that effectively, or at some point in time, you're going to be doing less of what you trained on and more of managing the strategy of and influencing a team of other people who are actually doing the hands-on work. And that effectively is emotional intelligence.
Welcome to Medical Money Matters, the podcast where you can find experts, answers, and resources so that you can achieve mastery over the financial and business aspects of your practice.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Medical Money Matters. I am joined today by Laurie Baedke, author, speaker, executive coach, and I'm delighted to say a good friend. She is, as I said, the author of several books. Her most recent is Mentor, Coach, Lead to Peak Professional Performance. She is also an international speaker, and I'm feeling fortunate because she's graced us with her presence, I think, 3 or 4 times in the last year here in the Pacific Northwest with a variety of different groups. And she's also quite active in leadership development, and she works as an executive coach. And if that is not enough to keep her busy, she is also a podcaster. So she hosts a routine podcast called The Growth Edge, a leadership podcast, which now has 11 seasons out and a tremendous amount of insight. Really great podcast, fantastic insights. She's launching some new online on-demand leadership development courses, which are structured around sound, evidence-based learning, and a little bit of an unusual twist that has well-being sort of woven through all of the courses, which we don't always see in those courses. So I could go on, but I think probably better to just say welcome, Laurie, and let's get to the conversation. So thanks for being with us today.
Hello, Jill. Thank you so much for having me. I can't wait to dig in.
All right. Well, let's jump right in. So we talked a little bit about your most recent book, Mentor, Coach, Lead to Peak Professional Performance. That emphasizes mentoring, coaching, and leadership. And so my first question for you is just, how does effective mentorship translate into stronger financial performance and stronger reputation for medical practices?
Yeah. Well, take me right to the deep end. We didn't go start
We'll
in
just
the
jump
shallow
in.
end.
There's no easy start. Yeah.
Jill is all about the ROI. And
Yeah.
there's a good news is that there is a lot of research that really supports and underpins the importance of mentorship. And so many of us, if we think about our career journey, we think about all of the people who have been amazingly generous to us in sharing of their wisdom and their expertise. And we've sat at their feet and we soak up their wisdom and we are better because of it. When we think of the master and the apprentice, we think about mentorship and we use phrases like we stand on the shoulders of giants, right? Because we are better because someone helped to make us better. Someone invested in our development. And the really important reality to understand that research backs is that individuals who are well mentored, who have great thought partners and voices of counsel who hold them accountable and stretch them outside their comfort zone, they are more promotable, they earn more, and they are promoted more often. And so we should be looking for people who are well mentored. If we're recruiting to our teams, we should be asking about people who are lifelong learners. We should be hearing people talk about the voices of wisdom that they love to run in circles with. But then as well, as we think about the importance of our being well mentored at every single stage and season of our career, we should be thinking about whose feet am I sitting at? Because if I want to be more successful, if I want to have better perspective, if I want to be in the rooms with people who have been there, done that, and have the battle scars to be able to share it with me and help me to avoid missteps or normalize the failures that are inevitable along the way, then I should be thinking about whose feet am I sitting at? And so when it came to writing my most recent book, I realized I was very fascinated by and feeling very grateful that I had people that were so generous to give to me as mentors and open doors for me as sponsors and provide me valuable and critical feedback as coaches. But inevitably, what I knew was that as I've gone through my journey, I am inevitably turning around and I am mentoring and I am sponsoring and I am coaching others. And so I wanted to know everything I could understand and everything that the literature had to say about the three practices of mentorship and sponsorship and coaching, and how it's bidirectional, how we both act as the beneficiary and the benefactor.
Such a great insight. I love being in conversation with people, and frequently they'll come to me asking questions, and I'm always curious what they have that I can learn from. And everybody has something. And I love, we had lots of conversation recently about the intergenerational workplace. And
Yep.
it's easy to assume that all the wisdom resides with the senior folk. And in fact, yeah, there's a lot. I like the word bidirectional. That's
Yeah.
wonderful. Well, I want to go back a little bit, rewind a little bit in your career to when you were one of the founding, or you were the founding program director for Creighton's
Yeah.
executive MBA in healthcare management. So you've guided a lot of emerging leaders. And I wonder if you could share a story with us where mentorship or sponsorship produced a measurable financial and or reputational impact.
Like for one of my colleagues?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Man, that's a really good question, Jill. I mean, yes. So I had the great pleasure and honor of being recruited by the dean of the business school at Creighton here in Omaha, Nebraska, who asked me to join his team and help him to build degree and non-degree programs for healthcare professionals. And it was such a delight to be able to do that. And we built an executive MBA program that was a hybrid-based program. It has several residencies throughout the course of the journey. And so students would come from every time zone, multiple different states, and it was very multidisciplinary as well. The great majority of the students were physicians, many other clinician leaders of a variety of different disciplines, and then non-clinicians as well, and all working professionals. And so as I watched those individuals come to the program and realize, almost all of them realized that there was a gap that existed between what they knew, what they had trained on in their craft, in surgery, in pharmacy, in therapy, or in finance or quality, and realizing that what they needed to know to ascend to that next level or perform well at the level that they'd been promoted to was topic matter. It was curricula that didn't exist in their original academic training journey. And so as the light bulbs started to go on and help individuals to know how to speak the language of the executive team now that they were in those rooms, or interact with their board, or better negotiate on behalf of their private practice so that they could, in fact, thrive despite the headwinds that are, of course, natural in everyone in healthcare in any domain: academic medicine, for-profit, private practice, community health, any different domain, is feeling like I need to acquire new skills so that I could better understand each of the different facets of the business cycle. And honestly, Jill, I will tell you that often it is those technical competencies. It's the content like finance. It's the topic of, it's something that's policy related. But more often than not, I think the light bulbs that really resulted in an ROI for a learner, for a student or a colleague, was more on just the terrific value that exists in being well networked and being in rooms with other diverse individuals from different types of organizations and learning the similarities or dissimilarities that exist, and just being in community with other folks. And that's, I think, paradoxical for most of us, because as high achieving professionals, we think, I just need to do more of X, right? If I'm a surgeon, I just need to do more cases. If I'm a primary care physician, I should probably just see more patients, right? And that sometimes translates, and that is part of what we do to move the needle.
Sure.
But sometimes what we need actually happens in the margin or in the extracurricular, and in being around other smart individuals, in finding individuals who we can benefit from their lessons learned and maybe avoid some of those mistakes or missteps. I think the networking piece is one where a lot of that capacity for any of us actually opens up. And that doesn't necessarily compute on paper because it doesn't seem like 1+1=2, does it?
Right, exactly. I love the notion of being well networked. That is not something we teach in any of the clinical programs, right? Medical school, nursing
No.
school. And that's, I would echo your sentiment. That's where we see the magic happening in the physician leadership project is those courses are held in person. And so you
Yep.
are in the room. And to your point, avoiding some of those mistakes or missteps, or just being able to phone a friend, like you've got a room full of friends and you can ask the questions.
Absolutely. Well, and also just being in conversation so that the individuals from I mean, healthcare should not be as siloed as it has become over time. And often the we, they inside of organizations that happens, right? Anytime that there's othering, oh, that's what the administrators are doing, or the physicians and nurses, or administrators saying, well, the physicians, they're just, no, any of the othering, the we, they that happens is not what should be occurring, where in conversation, there should be dialogue about what would help you be more productive or efficient. What problems are you wrestling with that need to be solved, or vice versa, so that more of those kind of stepping into that tension. And it's intimidating for many, and it's challenging, and it doesn't seem like these are my people. But sometimes you have to sit in the room and find that so that you can be a part of a solution.
Yeah. And get the notion that we're all on the same team. And
Indeed.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, let's shift gears a little bit and talk about your digital courses because those
Yeah.
cover topics like leading self. So we're getting into some strength-based leadership, the EQ edge. So I'd love to talk a little bit about emotional intelligence and then core leadership competencies as well. I love all those. We could do a deep dive in all of those. So since we're still talking about money, because medical money matters, which of those elements do you think has the strongest correlation to improving practice performance, I would say in general, financial and otherwise?
Yeah. Man, that's another tough question. You are not throwing me the softballs you promised me,
I'll
Jill.
look for a softball question. Okay.
I'm kidding. I'm kidding. Well, yeah, so I built and launched a handful of digital courses last year because I've had the great privilege for, 17, 18 years now of being able to speak professionally and traveling all over the nation, all over the world, and giving talks at CME courses and at healthcare association conferences and in-house for organizations. And inevitably, I get off of the stage or I end a workshop or a retreat and people say, oh my goodness, I wish my team back home could have heard that talk on emotional intelligence. I wish that my department chairs had access to that lecture. And so this was a great way to provide a solution to that problem, which was, hey, it's available on demand and it's really affordable and approachable and flexible. And so that was my way to be able to offer a solution to a problem I was consistently hearing, which was people saying, oh my goodness, I want more of that. And I can't be on all of the airplanes and only ever sleep in hotel rooms.
Yeah.
But I think that all the way back to your question, I would say to you, I mean, it is our ability to perform at a high level. There's not one single lever, as you well know, right? If we think about our health and well-being, you mentioned earlier that I speak on that topic. I'm deeply passionate about that topic because none of us can perform like a high performance automobile. If your car runs on premium gas only, you don't put the basic stuff in, right? And if you are a high performance professional, you are going to need to rely on well-being, on premium gas. But far too often we're all running on fumes, and no one achieves maximal physical well-being without it being multiple factors. It's movement, it's sleep, it's nutrition, it's mental as well. Like, it's so multifactorial. And so our leadership performance is as well. But I would just tell you two quick sound bites about two of the topics that you mentioned: leading self-awareness and knowing one's self. you really can't lead others effectively if you don't lead yourself effectively. Not only because we need self-awareness, we each need to know where our strengths and our weaknesses reside. We need to know how to delegate or empower other people to cover our blind spots, or to be that stopgap in the space where if you love to live at 30,000 feet and above and you can do the detail, but it puts you to sleep, then bring other people on your team who cover that part of your life, or vice versa, right? And so self-awareness is so incredibly crucial. And the way that I make that business point the most is to say, how painful is it? And we all know how painful it is to work around someone that lacks self-awareness, who doesn't know their blind spots, is completely ignorant to certain things about themselves that are in their way or in others' way. And so that's the soundbite business case for self-awareness. And what I would say about emotional intelligence is there are 4 domains to the emotional intelligence model, and self-awareness is number 1. Self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, and relationship management. And when we think about what makes any of us successful, it's almost always in those behavioral domains. It's in emotional intelligence. It's not just the technical competencies in whatever it is that is our area of expertise. If you're a cardiothoracic surgeon, or if you run the highest performance revenue cycle management firm in the Pacific Northwest, right? Whatever made you great, in order to do that effectively, or at some point in time, you're going to be doing less of what you trained on and more of managing the strategy of and influencing a team of other people who are actually doing the hands-on work. And that effectively is emotional intelligence, right? Technical competence is what gets us in the door, and emotional intelligence or behavioral competence is what inevitably always sets us apart.
That gets us a little further down the road. Yeah. This is a fantastic conversation. I'm getting insight just as we're going along. So it's fantastic. I love it. Well, let's talk a little bit about mentorship and sponsorship. And as you and I said at the top of the conversation, is often it's a two-way development. So I'm curious how you advise medical practices to really cultivate internal sponsorship to strengthen their leadership bench.
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. And I think that often it is something that's just left on the back burner. And we don't think about bench strength development. We don't think about succession planning inside of organizations. And there are plenty of natural barriers to it. First and foremost, there's rarely any extra time. We're all so busy doing the tasks that we're not thinking about the long game. And bench strength development, succession planning is in fact the long game. And so if we only ever stay in that day-to-day cycle or based loop, we're not playing the long game. If you're not building a team of individuals around you who could in fact run even if you didn't exist, right? And that's intimidating to so many people because they love the control and they love to be needed. And so one of the barriers that exists to leaders developing others around them and surrounding themselves with smart and capable people, and then empowering them to be more valuable. Many people feel threatened by that and say, well, if they could exist without me, where's my value? And I am not comfortable doing that. I need to keep control of this. And so maybe asking one's self or looking at your leaders and saying, what is in fact stopping you from that? And being the type of open-minded, growth-minded organization that says, if you're valuable, there's going to be another role for you to level up into. And that can be pushing people outside of their comfort zones to think about. But a couple of hard-earned truths that I've encountered or acquired over my career, and I'm guessing many of your listeners have as well, is that our organizations aren't built to love us back.
Yeah, that's well put.
I mean, some of the most amazingly successful and valuable people, like, hate that hit by the bus metaphor, but if something catastrophic happened to us, would the world keep turning? For so many people and organizations, of course. And so when we think about it from that more negative, catastrophic perspective, shouldn't we think about being a little bit more, I like to say, open-handed? And for someone who's watching this on the YouTube channel, you can see I'm not holding tightly to this. My palms are up. I'm open-handed, and I'm generously sharing with others opportunities and development. And if that means that there may be even they surpass me at some point, okay, great. Or if I've built such an amazing team that now my leaders need to say, well, if we want to keep Laurie and have her be challenged, we probably better open a new door of opportunity for her, or for Laurie to believe that there's going to be another opportunity for me. And so some of those headwinds exist, and they are more challenged in smaller organizations, frankly. If you're in a huge system or in a big academic medical center or institution, there are always going to be so many different departments and so many different various levels. But in smaller organizations where you've only got maybe a couple dozen or a couple hundred employees, that succession planning cycle is longer, and there are not as many doors that open. And so I give you that context to also acknowledge that it's not always identical to consider. It has so much to do with individuals, and it has a lot to do with organizations as well. But I would just challenge any of us to say, what am I holding on to too tightly, perhaps, that is in the way of someone else around me who is smart and capable and amazing, and they're thriving or advancing? And then perhaps, what is it that I am not open to or not comfortable releasing control of in terms of what next chapters could exist for me?
Yeah, fantastic. I love the notion of letting go of things and letting your team take some things on. That I think is especially challenging, as you said, in small to medium-sized groups where everybody's already busy. And then you're trying to think about developing bench strength and stopping to take the time to really invest the time in the mentorship and the sponsorship and the coaching. And that can feel a little overwhelming to busy physician administrators. Is when am I going to find the time in my day to do that? Yeah. Man.
Can I share an example
Please.
of something so I'm working with one of my one-on-one executive coaching clients right now is an academic surgeon, and he and I have been really working on something that I've done with one or two other clients historically, but creating and building a custom GPT for him that allows for him to leverage technology to customize communications and development plans for some of his colleagues in his section and his direct reports as well, that really allows him to be more efficient in the way that he is giving feedback to developmental feedback to his trainees and his colleagues, and then helping that to maximize his efficiency because his time is very limited, to really give good creative acceleration to the way that he is developing himself and the way that he is communicating to his colleagues in his department or section, and the way that that then allows him to overcome those headwinds of there never being enough time. And it's been a really fantastic and fun process. I am only a couple of years into leveraging a custom GPT of my own. And it's been fun to leverage that technology for his unique goals. And so there is so much that's coming around us that can be a great tool and resource if we are open-minded to seeking out some of the counsel and expertise on how to best leverage it.
Yeah. Oh, that's fantastic. I love every time I hear a new use case for a GPT, I think, oh, okay, to your point, there is so much opportunity out there and so much to leverage. I love it. I want to talk a little bit about the coachable leader and your emphasis on adaptability and feedback culture. And as we're talking about how do we find time to make the investment in leadership and sponsorship and coaching, how about creating the culture of coachability and how that impacts outcomes in a medical setting?
Yeah. So this was the one segment when I wrote my most recent book 2.5 years ago. I kind of looked at the beneficiary and the benefactor side, the bidirectionality of mentorship, sponsorship, and coaching, like I said earlier. But I realize in hindsight, if I'm criticizing myself in my journey of writing that manuscript, I didn't dig in enough to that sixth little cubby hole, which is the being coachable. I focused a lot on how we as leaders coach others around us, but I didn't dig equally into that. How are we coachable? And so I took a victory lap in the 6 months after I got done writing that book, as it was getting ready to be published. And I really dug deep into the literature on that space that I realized I'd woefully under-examined. And my talk on coachability and my course on coachability is all about that. And it really, I would say a couple of things to set that up. First and foremost, about feedback. As professionals, the farther we advance in our career, the longer that we're around, the less feedback that we get. It just is natural that people look at us and think, well, Jill's been around for 14 years, or Laurie's been around for however many years. She ought to have it figured out by now. And so they stopping us to offer formative feedback. And also, the higher that we ascend in leadership, the higher we climb in the rank, the less likely are people going to be comfortable saying to us, hey, are you aware of the way that you communicate, or your body language in tough circumstances is a disadvantage to you, right? Because they don't want to offend me. They don't want me to get defensive. They don't want to jeopardize their own position because they report to me. And so the farther we advance in our career and the higher we ascend in leadership, the less likely we are to get feedback. And so without feedback, we are operating blind.
Yeah.
And when it comes to blind spots or biases, ignorance is not bliss. The second thing I would say is that good is the enemy of great. And for most people, once you achieve proficiency, like once you find your sea legs and you like get upright and you're heading on, your outcomes might be adequate, but is there better, right? Could it be optimized? And feedback and coaching is all about that tweaking and that optimization. It's why elite high achieving athletes all have coaches, right? Someone who's not on the field or the pitch or the track, but has perspective, and their line of sight is, ooh, one little tweak in follow through after the shot, one little tweak in the golf swing, one little tweak in the mechanics of a heavy Olympic lift with a lot of weight on a barbell is the difference between success on that lift or injury, right? And so we can't see those things for ourselves. And good is the enemy of great. And so far too often, good is just good enough. And we do have to give ourselves grace, especially as high achieving professionals who often don't practice self-compassion at all or nearly enough. Sometimes good is good enough. But on the other hand, if you're feeling plateaued or stalled or stuck, or if you feel like there's a little bit more that could be achieved, that might be a nudge to you to say, what could coaching unlock? Who gives me feedback? When's the last time I got feedback? How could I be more proactive in seeking out feedback? And then we start to set the example that other people should be a little bit more open-minded and should be doing the same thing. It requires a high level of humility, right? Our ego is one of the biggest barriers, if not far and away the greatest barrier that stands between us and being coachable, right? But I could tell you a quick soundbite. One of my most recent podcast episodes, I had Dr. Caprice Greenberg on. She is the founding president emeritus of the Academy for Surgical Coaching. She's the chair of surgery at UNC Chapel Hill. And she founded the Academy for Surgical Coaching with a mission for every surgeon a coach, because as our physician and surgeon colleagues train in that academic journey through medical school and residency, of course, they're getting assessed and critiqued and feedback. But as you become established in your career in academic medicine, or in academic medicine as an attending, or as a practicing physician in whatever environment that you're practicing, people aren't watching your cases. People aren't watching you assess a patient on rounds anymore like they used to in residency or fellowship. And now you're operating blind. Dr. Greenberg went first, and she said, I actually got surgical coaching, and even as well established, she's a full professor of surgery. She's very well established. She's a breast surgeon. And she said, my re-excision rates went down. I got coaching at a very well-established season in my career, and my surgical outcomes improved. So there's the business case for coachability. And in that context, it's fantastic because from a surgical perspective, there's access to be able to seek out and engage a peer coach. And now they have started also to certify surgeons as non-surgical coaches, life coaches, leadership coaches, peer coaches, which is a beautiful thing, right? But back to the ROI, right? what more performance could be achieved. Sometimes even the most elite high achievers, Olympians and NBA world-class athletes, world champion athletes, they can unlock and tweak and optimize their own performance. What could happen if any of us started to think, what happens if I'm a little bit more coachable? What happens if I do that within my team? I'm asking for feedback and then I'm doing my very best to receive it gracefully. What would that look like?
Yeah.
And what does coachability look like? And the research shows that people who are more coachable perform at a higher level. They're more promotable, right? Think about, we've all probably worked around individuals who are, there's no doubt they're technically sound and talented, but they're really difficult to work around because they're very brittle. They care about no one's opinion, right? And they're just going to bulldoze and they're going to do it their way. Is that the type of person you want on your team? Is that the type of person you want to be?
Yeah. Yeah. Great questions to reflect on. I heard in there an invitation for all of our listeners that I'd love for you and me to give them, which would be to be coachable and to be able to receive feedback. And I recall the first time I heard you ask that question, when was the last time you got feedback? And I spent a minute or two with that thinking, yes, other than from my coach, I don't get a lot of feedback. So an invitation in there for our listeners, if you are not actively working with a coach, something to consider. And to your point, for our physician listeners, you may be looking for someone that could coach you on your office visits or on your surgeries, or you may be looking for an executive coach of some sort. Yeah. Wonderful. Well, Laurie, I know we could talk all day, but
All day.
I think a good wrap-up question for today is, what is one pearl of wisdom you'd like to leave our audience with today?
I think I will quote a really amazing author whose work I love, and that's Dr. Marshall Goldsmith. And he wrote a book titled What Got You Here Won't Get You There. And this is both equal parts encouraging and exhausting to me, and perhaps to you as well, because it says that everything that's made me successful to this date, everything that I acquired in my training and formation journey, and even some of the things that made me really effective in a prior role or a prior season might be insufficient to move me to where I want to be next. And if I loved being more hands-on in an earlier season of my career, but I definitely want to now move into a season where I'm delegating more and I am empowering more and I'm dependent on less for the day-to-day outcomes and can elevate my focus to strategy or succession planning or next chapters, then that means I might have to be looking at different tools in my tool belt or reaching for levers that I haven't been reaching before. And that's a growth edge. That's me finding out that I've reached the capacity of what is known or familiar and acquiring new knowledge or growing new muscles of behavioral competence or network access to be able to find the resources to thrive. And I think if you are a growth-minded individual, if you are a legacy-oriented individual, sometimes we have to diminish our reliance on what has always worked and find some new skills, find some new muscles that can be more reliable to us that will help us to thrive in the next season. And so I think my pearl or my call to action is just to be a growth-minded individual. Do it while practicing self-compassion, because again, as high-achieving professionals, sometimes we can be the most unrelenting in our expectations of ourselves. And so if you're in a season where you need to give yourself a little bit of grace and good is good enough, I am standing here cheering for you and rooting you on. But if you're in a season where you've got a little bit more capacity or to get that next stretch goal or to move into that next season or level that you want, you're going to have to put your foot on the gas just a little bit more. Then find the courage and find the space or the capacity or the counsel to look for those new muscles, those new tools to find your way, because I have yet to meet a smart, high-achieving professional in healthcare who lacks for work ethic or grit or will. And so relying on those and letting go of the side of the pool and going outside of your comfort zone of what's known is usually where that is found.
Wonderful. Well, Laurie, thank you so much. I will make sure that we get all of your links in the show notes for the podcast. You can find Laurie at the Growth Edge podcast and also at lauriebaedke.com. And Laurie, thank you again so much for all the insight you shared.
It's my pleasure. Thanks for having me, Jill.
Thank you.
You can find more information online at medicalmoneymatterspodcast.com, and you can sign up to be notified when enrollment opens for the Medical Money Matters e-learning program for a mini MBA physician style, which will carry CME credits and will be released in upcoming months. In that, we'll do an even deeper dive so you can understand dynamic budgeting strategies, cash flow forecasting, and other more esoteric financial concepts. We've included those links in the show notes. As I like to close out these podcasts, congratulations on taking the next step in your professional development and for making the commitment to learn about the financial and business aspects of your practice. I look forward to being on this journey with you and send you my heartfelt gratitude for all that you do for your patients all day, every day.